Emre, welcome to Permastoked, the podcast. How's it going, dude?
Pretty good. Great to be here.
Right on, man. Nice to see you, dude. How you been?
Been pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah?
Hunkered down in Tofino.
Yeah, so today is what, April 25th. We are amidst COVID-19.
That's right.
Yeah, so living in a place like Tofino that lives and breathes off of tourism,
Yeah.
what does that look like right now for you guys?
It looks a lot more quiet than it would be at this time of the year. That's for sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, all essentially tourism operations are shut down. So including my paddling and surfing operation. And because essentially, I mean, now BC's in a state of emergency, but even before that, Tofino made the call to shut down because, similar to other small communities, don't have the ability to deal with the, influx of people coming in and out and the effect that that would have of spreading COVID in a community with not too many resources.
Yeah, I got the hint pretty early on. Like on social media, it's normally,
Mm-hmm.
hey, come on down to Tofino.
Yeah,
Suddenly the message was, do not come here.
that's right.
We do not want your illness from the rest of the world brought to our little sanctuary.
Yeah, and it's a strange message to be putting out, like you said, as a town that, does essentially live off tourism. And it's not that we don't ever want people to come. It's obviously right now is not a good time to be traveling to smaller communities, whether it's Tofino or other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have a very small hospital there. Are there any confirmed cases in Tofino?
I don't think that we would know if there was. It
Okay.
seems like the town doesn't seem to be overwhelmed, which is good. But in general, I think it's kind of a policy thing for not identifying where cases are. So even if there was a case here, um, yeah, it's not going to be something that the town knows about.
Yeah. So are locals still surfing?
Um, well, yeah, it's the beaches in town. I mean, Tofino's been treading the fine line of kind of keeping things open for people in terms of, we don't have to completely stay in our houses as long as you act in a responsible way with physical distancing. Um, we're still able to go outside, so the beaches in Tofino are still open. But having said that, there's big signs everywhere that says "Don't ruin a good thing," and respect. Essentially, doing your part of keeping separated from people. But the national park, and things like that, those are all closed. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a short-term sacrifice, hopefully for a long-term payoff.
Exactly. And I mean, you look at other communities that have closed down even harder. Like, I'm not sure if you heard the word about New Zealand that came out towards the end of last week or this week, just within the last couple of days. And they did a hard lockdown. And now they seem to be kind of one of the countries that's able to open up the most with restrictions. But yeah, so it does pay off in the long term, I think.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of people on the internet screaming that they want to go and get their hair cut. It looks like you're not concerned with that.
No, I actually did cut my hair recently.
Oh,
So
you did?
yeah, yeah.
Nice, man.
Great
That's
time to
awesome.
try out the home barber.
Nice. I'm
Yeah.
I'm always envious. So I know who you are, but the audience here will get to know you through this podcast. But I want to basically just start off with, you know, from Turkey to Brampton, from Brampton to Tofino.
Yeah,
What is your origin story, man? How did you
yeah,
get from Ontario dude like me to West
that's right.
Coast surfer maniac
Yeah, started
paddleboarder?
off surfing the lake waves.
Yeah, yeah.
Back in those days, I was in a kayak. So I grew up in Burlington, Ontario. I mean, my family's from Turkey, so I came to Canada when I was 2. That part I don't remember so
Yeah.
well. So yeah, grew up in Burlington, and yeah, I was pretty lucky to get into paddling at a young age through essentially a high school club. Some of my other friends were doing it, so it was a whitewater kayaking club. But we would have to drive, an hour or over an hour to get to the usual rivers that we would paddle. But Burlington's located on Lake Ontario, and when the winds pick up, you actually get some waves there. So that was actually kind of my introduction to surfing waves, was in a kayak catching lake waves. And back then, so this is like the 90s, um, uh, the lake surf scene was definitely not what it is today. I mean,
Yeah.
um, when I go back and visit my parents and there's surf, you always see a couple people out there, but that was never the case. I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
Especially on the Canada side.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I don't, yeah, yeah. You think it was more stuff happening in the States back then, potentially?
There was, but I
Yeah,
think it still has exploded more since then.
definitely.
But
Yeah,
yeah, they have more people there generally, so more people equals more curiosity. They're probably going to get to things sooner than us, but we've caught on and we are out there now.
that's right. Yeah.
So when you
So
started kayaking, it was not just whitewater kayaking. You were touring and everything else, right? But you
most,
really
I mean,
thrived off the waves.
Mostly whitewater, but it's that sense of kind of playing around in a dynamic environment. I mean, a big part of whitewater kayaking is actually riding river waves, so standing waves, things like that.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's, I think, the connection to, for example, surfing in a lake or surfing in the ocean. The dynamics of and the fun of surfing, kind of, being in the moment of this kind of not chaotic environment, but when there's it's that exhilaration, I think, that people get kind of attached to, is very similar, whether it's a lake wave, an ocean wave, or a river wave. The actual dynamics of surfing are similar. The waves may
Yeah.
not be the same, but yeah. So that was kind of my intro there, and I pursued whitewater kayaking for a while. I actually worked on rivers for a long time and worked as a kayak instructor and raft guide. But in the meantime, my passion for surfing on the ocean and surfing on a surfboard kind of grew. It's just another tool to interact with the waves. So
So how did that transference occur from kayak to SUP or to surf?
yeah, it's a good. It's it's pretty fun surfing on a board rather than in your kayak. I mean,
Okay.
there's a big difference in your range of motion, your ability to stand, just what you can do on the wave. So, I mean, my friends and I were always into, or kind of got into regular surfing as well. I'm not too
Out
sure.
of Burlington?
Yeah, out of Burlington. Yeah, exactly. We'd go on like the odd surf trip and stuff like that, even down to, the east coast of the States or Costa Rica. And,
Oh,
so it's kind
nice.
of like a cumulative, I guess, spark in it's an easy transfer from one sport over to the other in terms of you're still surfing waves. Um,
So it had been building and accumulating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And even, river surfing eventually became a thing with people going out on rivers on surfboards and stuff like that, which we see all over in certain spots now.
Yeah.
Um,
I
that
read
was,
something about you surfing a standing wave in Montreal. Is
yeah,
that true?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I went to university in Montreal, and that was a time where I kind of switched from kayaking to being on a surfboard on those waves. I mean, the waves around Montreal are ideal for um, being being able to surf them on a surfboard. Like they're relatively easy access, and they've got larger kind of glassy faces than some other river waves. So
Oh, so you were getting actual breaking waves rather than just the standing wave there?
Yeah, standing wave, but some, standing waves in some rivers are a lot more of a foam pile or something like that.
Oh, okay, I
Whereas in
see.
Montreal, it's, they can be pretty nice waves. Yeah. So
Nice, yeah.
kind
Did you
of,
have to compete for space on that, or was it?
the scene there has definitely gotten a lot more crowded now. I mean, there's different etiquette in the rivers where, um, again, you're waiting for the person that's on the wave to kind of flush off until the next person goes, and
Yeah,
so on. So it's a little different than in the ocean when you're almost, trying to catch the same wave sometimes as other people.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but that's I would go out early mornings and kind of try to get away from the crowds then, and even back then it wasn't like it is now. So
Yeah,
I was usually out of Montreal and raft guiding during the summers anyway, which is kind of the busier time. So
yeah.
I was that guy that was in the water in March and April early morning. So it was quiet then.
I love that, you and I are both in our 30s, but because we started surfing like 20 or so years ago, we've been doing this quite a long time, and especially in the Great Lakes scene before it really caught on in Canada, at least. So it's funny that you and I are both like, yeah, back in my day, we used
Yeah,
to.
and obviously there was people, I mean, doing it well before that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But it's true that it has really, I mean, I still kind of follow everything or try to kind of keep in touch with what's going on around the lakes. Obviously, it holds a special spot in my heart,
Yeah, for sure.
being where I grew up. And but just seeing the amount of excitement and just how many people are in the water is totally different than what I experienced.
Yeah. Do you get
Yeah.
back to those lake waves ever?
I do every time I'm in Burlington or something like that on a holiday family visit. I'll keep an eye on the forecast, and yeah, if there's waves, I'll try to rally up some friends. Mostly, it's a good excuse to get back in the water with some friends, and I mean, there's even some spots like. For example, like the bluffs around Toronto, which I've never been to yet. I mean, it's a bit of a drive from Burlington,
Yeah.
but I'd love to check out the scene there if it ever works out, because it's interesting seeing these kind of local surf scenes as well.
For sure. Well, I just recently interviewed Larry Cavero, who is a really well-known surfer out of the bluff scene, especially.
Yep, I
And
definitely know who you're talking about. I mean,
okay,
he's probably one of the most stoked guys out there.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
he is seems like the easiest guy to become friends with. So I'm sure if you go back there and you send him a text or something, you'd have a buddy for life, and he'd take you there for sure. So I know
Yeah,
I really want to check that out as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So then, for me, I'm not much of a kayaker. I tried kayaking once. I didn't have a lot of success in it. And being a SUP instructor, there's all the kayak guys, there's like 20 of them, and then there'll be like two or three of us SUP people, right?
yeah.
And I'm fine with that. But I'm wondering the sensation you're talking about, or as we call it in this culture, the stoke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it the same kind of thing when you're kayaking? Did you get bit by that stoke where it's like, God, I can never not do this?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's definitely the first thing that I pursued, in the sense of I want to do this on a more consistent basis. So, you know, growing up, we would maybe get out on the weekends or so on. And as I went through school, working as a guide in the summers was the first way to kind of, be on the river throughout the whole summer.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So, and I think that's kind of spread to just that idea of kind of basing my life around being able to do what I love on a regular basis.
I read a quote that you said something to the effect of, um, you follow wave energy, or you live your life according to wave energy. What do you mean
Well,
by that?
always keeping an eye on the swell,
Nice.
maybe. Um, yeah, I'm not too sure. I'd have to see the specifics of that quote, but I mean, I think being connected to, it's easy for surfing to turn into a little bit of an obsession. And I think, especially with the ocean, there's always these moments of perfection that you're chasing after. Like there's a number of things affecting the surf conditions, right? So when all the stars line up, you get that perfect day, and then after it's over, you kind of want to get the next one. So I find that it's exciting because it keeps me connected with what's going on with the environment around me, and the energy that's in the ocean. But it's also that kind of continuous pursuit that, okay, this is an ever-changing medium, and meaning like the ocean conditions. So there's that obsession of wanting to be connected so that you can be on it when it's going off.
Yeah. So one of the things I admire about you is, well, first of all, for myself, I consider myself a complete soul surfer. Like, it's just the sensation. When I caught that first wave back on Lake Erie, I was 18, 19, something like that. It was life-changing. It was like, okay, I've never fit in with the hockey crowd. I've never quite found my place here as a Canadian and growing up in this small town. And suddenly it was like, this is me. This is what I do. And easily, just fit into my life. But in terms of being a real well-rounded waterman, I had worked on a commercial fishing boat. I'd fished my whole life. I'd body surfed my whole life. So I had some of that. But in terms of the weather and knowing, the signs and indications of waves and whatnot, for me, that went as far as poking my ear out the window. Like, I would just listen. Are there waves? I would hear them. And if there were, I would go. In terms of weather forecasting and all that, I mean, I didn't have anyone to learn from. I was on my own figuring this thing out. So, recently with doing some surf SUP skills courses through you, and then of course I got my surf SUP instructor's certificate through you. It was really, like I said, I really admired how much you knew and understand the sea and what's happening, under the waves. And that's something that, as I'm always working on. I do not have a science brain, but still I find it really fascinating, and I've certainly learned a lot of that from you. So where did that come from for yourself? Is that through kayaking as well, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that there is like some sort of roots in all these type of, environment-based sports that we do, whether it's like kayaking or playing around in the mountains and looking at snow forecasts and stuff like that. I think I've always had an interest in digging a little bit deeper to understand how things work, or, oh, why was this, 5-star forecast that I looked at today so accurate, whereas the other day when I saw the same kind of thing, why was it so off? So kind of digging a little bit deeper into understanding beyond just those initial numbers that you might see when you kind of, pull up a forecasting site. And I mean, also working in the industry and stuff like that, it's not just, trying to find my own surf conditions, but also, or paddling conditions. It's also has a kind of day-to-day effect on making sure groups out there are safe, making sure you're planning for the day and so on. So it kind of has that, not like a double connotation, but I just get more practice because of that as well. So it's kind of like a work and pleasure thing. And the more you dig into it, kind of the more you learn. And so I think it comes from that idea of trying to understand what's actually happening out there beyond the numbers. And maybe a little bit about also how people understand things. For example, I find it a lot easier for myself to understand trends and larger concepts rather than kind of memorizing details or things like that. So if I have a idea of what's happening with the weather, or how essentially the weather follows certain patterns when it comes to winds, different pressure systems, how those affect the swell. Eventually you can piece together the clues or these signs to get a deeper understanding of what's going on, and also how that, anticipated forecast might change. So it's, sometimes people look at forecasts and they're like, oh, it's never accurate. And fair enough, things change all the time, but it's interesting understanding why it wasn't accurate. Well, it's like, oh, it's not that it wasn't accurate. It's just that, oh, this low pressure system moved just a little bit in a different direction. And that's how this changed the whole larger picture of what's going on.
Gotcha. So what are the perfect conditions in your mind for a surf day in Tofino?
Perfect conditions? Oh, that's, for everyone loves light winds, right? When you get that kind of glassy water with light winds, maybe a little bit of offshore, that's ideal. And then from there, when it comes to the actual swell, I don't think that there's one specific swell that's, you can look at the numbers of a forecast and it could be the same numbers that you saw, last time it was perfect, but you never know. It's never going to be the same. So I think that with the constantly changing tides and even, dynamics of the beaches and stuff like that, it's that ability to always be exploring in terms of looking at new ways that waves can be breaking, or never kind of sticking to, one defined, okay, it's always going to be good here, but kind of being open to, oh, wow, this forecast didn't materialize as much as I thought in one spot, but wonder what it's doing in another spot. So that constant kind of feeds that constant search that you might have. But overall, for me, long period is that kind of hidden concept sometimes when it comes to surf forecasting, that initially, especially at a earlier stage in my surfing career, I didn't realize how much it affected the waves. But longer period means more power usually. So I do enjoy when the waves have a little bit more punch to them, for sure.
Nice. Yeah. And for me, to really hinder my handicap even further is when you go to Tofino, you just talk to the locals. Where do I go today? Cox, Chesterman, whatever it is, and they tell you exactly where to go, where it's going to be best. So it takes some of the thinking out of it. So
totally, yeah. And I think you touched upon something earlier too when you were talking about just that idea of soul surfing, or you don't always need perfect conditions, right? And what's perfect for one person is definitely not perfect for the other person. And as you're going to the surf, you'll see people asking each other like, how was it, and stuff like that. And that's always interesting to do as well. But I see over and over again, what one person might think is amazing is not what the other person thinks is amazing. And as long as you're kind of feeding your own passion for the sport and kind of having fun, I think that's the most important thing. And definitely, I think some of the most fun sessions aren't necessarily when the waves are like pumping, but it's more so when you're out there with good people and good vibes, and right when you're kind of in your own groove of having fun. That's the best.
For sure. Yeah. And I found, especially talking to guys like you and me and other Great Lakes surfers, or guys who started there, people who started there anyhow. You take whatever, right? Like the waves aren't every day out there. So when they come, even if it's a foot of whitewash, it's like, if I can stand up, I am out there, right? So
that's right. Yeah. Sometimes I'll look at the conditions and just as a point of reference, I'll be like, well, if this was on the lakes, I'd probably go out. But
exactly. Or maybe it's going to be pretty shitty, which means a lot of people won't be out, so I will go out.
There you go. That's another thing, right?
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so you decided that you didn't want to sit on your ass anymore. You wanted to stand up and ride the waves.
Right.
Yeah. So what did that look like, man? How did you get out to Tofino and eventually, open up or co-found anyhow Tashi Paddle, which has led into SWELL Education?
That's right. Yeah. Well, I actually, well before, or I guess a similar time to coming out to Tofino or discovering Tofino for myself for the first time, I was a teenager. I was working at summer camps as my first kind of, teenage job. And I don't know what it was, the attraction of BC. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. It's got the mountains and the ocean. And I decided to try out working at a summer camp in BC rather than in Ontario as a way of kind of working and being able to discover a new area at the same time. It was at the end of that summer that I took my first trip out to Tofino. I was saying I was already kind of into essentially, catching waves. And I think that was probably my first time on a surfboard. This is like back in probably the year 2000. Yeah, I mean, after that, it's kind of, you get a bit familiar with the place, or cool, there's this place in, Canada that we can go out and go surfing. So just started taking more regular trips out to Tofino through the times that I was working at summer camps in BC. And then when I finished school, I was interested.
What was your degree in, or whatever?
Yeah. I went to McGill and I studied business. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, totally.
which has played a part into what you're doing now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's kind of funny. I don't know if like how direct the links are. How much I actually pull from the classes that I took or whatnot, because that was quite some time ago. But yep, I had the opportunity to go to university, so I figured I'd do that. But throughout that time, also realized that I wanted to build my life around kind of living somewhere where I could do what I'm passionate about on a regular basis. So when I finished school, I was interested to live and kind of build a life in different areas that allowed me to pursue my passion. So I kind of had a list of some places that I wanted to go to. And before I traveled abroad a little bit, I wanted to explore some spots around Canada, and it just happened to be that it was a good time to try living in Tofino and just see what it's like to actually live here and work here. And I did kind of like a 1-year stint here. I actually skipped the summer to go raft guiding at the time and came back. So kind of missed the busy tourist season at that.
Wow.
But that's what really accelerated my surfing was, living in Tofino throughout the winter and not working much, but spending lots of time in the ocean and
doing real work.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And after that, it was, I think after spending that year here and then leaving, it was a bit more clear to me that this is where I could see myself for a longer time. So when I came back in 2011, I came back with the intention that I'd like to try to build a life here. And,
leaving Tofino, man, I can't imagine. That must have been heartbreaking. I feel like I'm going through a breakup every time I just leave after a weekend being there.
You do appreciate how special of a spot it is, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's, there's lots of special places around the world, and I definitely went to live in some kind of cool other spots. I lived in the southwest of France for a while, and also spent some time along Central America. So, it wasn't too rough of a life, but it stuck out that Tofino's a special spot.
But in Canada, I mean, it's just got everything you want. It's got the woods, it's got that campfire smell in the air, cool people, wildlife, and surf. I mean, that's the added bonus. And at one time, from what I understand, it was a lumber town. It wasn't the surf town. And I suppose even you being there from 2011, you've probably seen the town change quite a bit in that time as well.
Yeah, I think at that time it was still very much, it wasn't that different. Like tourism was a full force.
Okay.
I think from kind of the late 90s, early 2000s was the real kind of uptick in tourism here. But, there's, yeah, you even see pictures from, the 70s and stuff like that before the national park was put in and stuff. And there was, cars all over Long Beach. And so it's not that it was a secret or, people weren't coming here, but I think the actual tourism industry just kind of continued to grow as, more people made it a vacation spot.
I see.
Yeah.
What about even though the cost of living and things like that? Have you seen that change from 2011 till now, or has that been fairly steady?
I think it was already on the rise then. I mean, like it was already crazy then, and it hasn't changed in the sense that it's only gotten more crazy, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think that's also a similar thing that you see in all areas of the world that are these beautiful places. And I mean, that's a deeper conversation about our kind of economic systems that we have. And if there's a high demand for people to essentially buy vacation homes, and it's a world destination, so it definitely drives up the price of everything, right? When the cost of property is high. And
Okay, so you came into Tofino 2011. Things were already swinging, but paddle surfing, on the other hand, was still fairly in its infancy in Tofino anyhow. Is that correct?
And I would say even, I mean, around the world compared to what it is now, right?
Okay,
At that time, like paddleboarding was definitely a thing, but it wasn't, it was still a type of sport that people might be kind of intimidated to try, or, oh, it must be hard to stand on those boards. Now when you talk to people about paddleboarding, I think it's kind of a mainstream paddle sport, and people might even think about, hey, let's go paddling. They're thinking about going out on a paddleboard. I'm sure around Vancouver and stuff like that, you kind of see a similar thing. So I think just along with that same world trend, it was definitely a newer sport, or not fully adopted into the mainstream during 2011. There definitely wasn't too much happening here commercially with paddleboarding at that time. And I actually initially got a job when I moved back out to Tofino as a sea kayak guide. So, I was working in the whitewater world and kayaking for a long time, and it was just a easy kind of, or a way to keep guiding and be on the water. And I already had the skills and certs from guiding in other spots. So started sea kayak guiding here, which was a great way to also kind of learn the waters other than the surf around Tofino, like learn the aspects of touring and things like that around here. And my passion was always, again, like I was fully into surfing at this time. So I was watching paddleboarding emerge, and more so, and also just the paddling world in general, right? It went from kind of something that's pretty niche, and then all these paddling magazines are kind of including paddleboarding gear and everything. And I just kind of saw this trend building. And at the same time, I just thought it'd be a great way to kind of combine my passions. So started off with that idea of like, oh, maybe rather than getting a longboard to go surfing with, I could get a paddleboard, and it would be a more versatile craft. I can go surfing with it, but I could also tour around the area and explore. And I just saw it as a sport that kind of combined my different passions. And I also saw that even though there were some people doing it here at the time, I didn't see so much of an approach to paddleboarding from a paddling background, like especially an instructional background that's rooted in paddling rather than surfing. So I just saw that there was kind of room to explore there.
Nice. Yeah. So that explains how you sort of went the route of paddle surfing versus just regular prone surfing.
Yeah, exactly. And I probably, in the time that I spent in the surf itself right now, it's probably pretty equal. Like I surf on a regular prone board, and on a paddle board, it's kind of an addition to the quiver based on the conditions. So it's pretty. I feel lucky to have the range of skills to be able to do both.
Yeah, I agree. I am as well. I remember in I don't know, maybe 2012, 13, like earlier in the decade anyhow, I remember going to Tofino and seeing those stickers that had a clown on it on a SUP board surfing. And, and that kind of left a taste in your mouth. You're like, oh, okay, why are they such clowns? I mean, they're still surfing, but whatever. But I have definitely seen that attitude shift. Do you think that do you think that stand-up paddle surfing has a wider reach or entry level than prone surfing? Do you find it less intimidating for new riders?
I think like that touches upon a very interesting thing that there's kind of many aspects to. I do think that once you get the paddling part down, then it's easier to catch your first waves on a paddleboard, or let's say like your first green waves where you're not just riding the whitewash, but you're actually catching that breaking wave. But the paddling part's kind of hard to learn, right? If you had access to that in somewhat calm conditions, like it doesn't have to be out in the ocean where there's swell, but anywhere where you can actually practice, okay, I can get this board moving forward, I can turn the board, I can move around the board a little bit. If you get those things down, then getting into the surf and being successful in the surf is that much easier. But if you just hop on a board with that constantly changing, environment of being in the swell, it's a uphill battle, and it's easier to be kind of, lying down on your surfboard. So I think even though paddleboarding is definitely kind of something that people around here have embraced in terms of a way to be on the water, paddle surfing itself is still extremely niche because it requires that, it's a different set of skills. And especially if you already have the surfing part down on a surfboard, it's hard to kind of jump back and be a beginner again at a sport. So it's a learning curve.
Yeah, certainly. I wish SUP was around in the early 2000s, that I knew of it anyways. I mean, that would have given me something to do the other, 300 and something days a year that I wasn't able to surf. So,
whether, on whatever craft you're surfing on, it's funny, sometimes surfing has this kind of image as maybe a aggressive sport or something like that, but it's all about working with the water and working with the conditions, right? It's more about technique than it is about power or strength or anything like that. So again, whether you're on a paddleboard or a surfboard, I think it's accessible to all ages if you kind of take that approach of, I'm not fighting the ocean, I'm working with the ocean.
Working with it, yeah. Nice. I like that philosophy. So Tashi paddle, you talked about that a bit, and there's been some changes there, and now you're going by SWELL Education.
That's right. Yeah.
So what is the current status of SWELL, and where do you see this? What's the future? What's the future like?
Yeah. So Tasha had started off with my partner at the time, and it was a great way to kind of work together, start a business from scratch, grow it into the various areas. And I think we're kind of learning and doing at the same time, and kind of got to a point to decide to go our own separate ways. And it made more sense to do or continue, doing what my expertise was in the area. So paddleboarding, surfing. I also do guide training, like for example, the instructor course that you were talking about, the surf instructor course, which you took, and I also teach first aid courses in the area. So, that overall concept of a outdoor education school with a specific focus of being on the water is something that I wanted to continue, and I needed a new name for it. So yeah, I thought it was nice to kind of come up with Swell. So it's all the same stuff I was doing with Tashi. But yeah, new name, new logo, kind of get a bit of a kind of a refresh in the sense. And
Nice.
it's pretty exciting because Tashi is actually going to continue, but I won't be involved with it anymore. It's going to only be the First Nation canoe tours, which is
Gotcha.
where that Tashi is a Klaokwiat word, which is the nation whose territory we're in here. So it's a lot more kind of suiting as well for Tashi continuing as that First Nations cultural experience, and now Swell continuing as paddleboarding, surfing, outdoor training, first aid training. Yeah.
Excellent. So anything different? Do you have your eye on something in the horizon that we might not know about, or
Things are
sticking with
always changing and evolving. And
yeah,
I think that's part of kind of, running a business in general. But no, nothing like kind of profound in terms of I'm excited to kind of continue developing the things that I've done. I always love finding new ways to deliver courses and kind of
did
offer
you not
new.
get a new retail location or something though?
Yeah, so I mean, in the past, and that had more to do with just the regular things that are happening around Tofino. So um, we, I'd always operated on the inlet and at the beach. It's kind of nice where you live on this, essentially thin strip of land that has ocean on both sides. So had access to both those launching spots. But the location on the inlet was essentially is going under or has been under renovations for the last little while. So just over the last year, I haven't operated on the inlet at all. And when Hotel Z opens up, so that's going to be essentially the new name of the hotel that was at or was previously Jamie's Rainforest Inn.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been doing some awesome stuff there, and I'll be moving back into that location, so getting that inlet access back and still
Right on.
staying at Mackenzie Beach at Mackenzie Beach Campground, or Mackenzie Beach Resort. Yeah, so which the two locations are like only a kilometer away from each other.
Yeah.
You don't have to drive very far in Tofino to get to the water.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to be there sooner than later, man. If you guys let us in anytime soon,
That's right. Well, and it's not a matter of and that's something that I think we're all in together, right? And it's
Yeah, for sure.
promising to hear that everyone doing their part, even nationally, that we can start talking about, okay, what's that next phase going to look? And I guarantee Tofino is going to be
Yeah.
looking forward to having visitors as soon as everyone's health and safety is something that we can provide.
With your students, just keep everybody one SUP board
That's
distance
right.
from each other, and
Yeah,
you'll be okay.
yeah.
So, Emery, you're a big, Paddle Canada ambassador and
Hmm.
very involved with Paddle Canada. And so maybe tell us a bit about the vision of Paddle Canada as you see it, and tell us about the SUP symposium and what we have to look forward with that.
Yeah. And sub symposium is definitely something that it's one of those kind of events that I look forward to all year. It just brings together the SUP community. But I mean, Paddle Canada in general, I was involved with Paddle Canada, or took my first Paddle Canada courses back when I was kayaking. So it's amazing that we have this national body that's kind of a leader in paddle instruction when it comes to all the various disciplines of paddling. And I think they make it very accessible for everybody. And there's, great foundations set up in the various paddling programs, but also allows for creativity for each instructor to be able to deliver the program in their own style. So my role within Paddle Canada right now is I'm actually the chair of the SUP paddle development committee, so the PDC we call it. And essentially it's a volunteer position. There's a group of us that try to keep the program up to date, maybe make changes to it, and so on. So it's amazing that this national organization is also mostly, volunteer run. So it's a great source for everyone to have, and to also keep keep the standard for paddling instruction in general at a good level across Canada. Yeah.
Any contributions you've made to that committee that you're especially proud of? Like any rules or guidelines or anything that you guys enacted?
I mean, since I've been part of the committee, it's actually, the foundation of the SUP program has been, was there already. And there's definitely lots of people that have put some good work into developing that program from scratch. I think more and more so, where things go now is trying to make things as accessible for people as possible. So, nothing that kind of sticks out in terms of like, here's the one, landmark thing, but hopefully just helping instructors access the information and kind of work around their own or how to adapt things to their own requirements as needed. So being as useful of a source as possible. And you were asking about the SUP symposium. And so one way that instructors essentially within the Paddle Canada world maintain their certification is they attend a maintenance clinic every 4 years. So, and that just keeps us kind of, on top of our game. And myself and Brian Raymer had this idea of kind of creating a paddleboarding event that's more based around instruction, and also bringing the kind of SUP guiding or SUP instruction community together. So one component that we added to that is that instructional component that also helps people maintain their Paddle Canada SUP instructor cert. So it's kind of one part of the symposium, but really I think overall the symposium is just a great way to kind of get everyone together, play on the ocean, and camping, beach fires, a great end of the year event. I wonder what's going to happen this year though.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's too soon to tell, but with the way
what is the tentative date?
Well, it's always kind of the last weekend of September. Sometimes as the dates shift, that could be the very, very start of October. But this year, I didn't prepare the actual date, but you can look at it on the calendar. I think the 26th, 27th is the Saturday, Sunday. So it's that of September. Yeah, we'll see. I think big events are going to be the last thing to open up regarding COVID-19. So, you hear about, summer festivals and kind of concerts and things like that being canceled. And I don't know how likely it is that kind of stuff opens up. I think more so we'll see tourism come back to Tofino in some way, but I don't know what our take will be on big events. But hey, if we have to wait a little bit longer, the next year is going to be even better. So that's all right.
Well, if conditions permit, I will be super stoked. If not, I can wait a year, but that was probably the most fun I had all last fall. That was just 2 days jam-packed of SUP surfing and getting to know like-minded people, and just some beautiful souls were at that event, man. That was a lot of fun. Awesome. Giveaways, good sponsors.
That's true. Yeah. And it means a lot to get all the support from everyone that comes out like yourself. And it's true. It's fun to kind of, go down to South Chesterman and see like 35 SUPs in the water, right? Not your usual, not your usual thing when you go down to the beach to see so many people, paddleboarders in the surf, and it's all done in a great way where we get to kind of spread out the skill level and make sure everyone's safe and still have a lot of fun.
So for those listening who are Paddle Canada instructors, who is it that gets the renewal for the 4 years? It would be basic instructors, advanced instructors, and what, SUP Surf 1 or 2? Or
It's because we actually have the surfing and the touring components to the symposium. It's instructors that fall anywhere from a SUP surfing or a SUP touring instructor all the way to flat water, whether it's advanced or basic. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're
the one instructor group it doesn't include is the river instruction. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're listening to this and you're coming up on your 4 years and you don't plan to become an instructor of another discipline or anything like that, this is a way to renew yourself for another 4 years by attending this event, refining your skills.
Exactly. And it's one event, and you know, there's been other, it doesn't have to be this event that you come out to. There's other certification maintenance clinics around the country. There's even other symposiums popping up that are doing similar things. Like I know that there was one run around the Montreal area last year, which is awesome to see. And just like speaking to instructors in general, there's also other ways that you can maintain your certification. So again, you know, sometimes when it comes to certification maintenance, people are kind of scrambling at the last second to keep their cert up to date, but just realize that there is resources for you out there. And hey, you can also reach out to me through Paddle Canada, to the subcommittee in general through Paddle Canada, and we can help you work through some of that stuff.
Right on.
Yeah.
Emre, man, it has been awesome talking to you, dude.
Likewise. It's awesome to see what you're doing and keeping the stoke alive even through all these crazy times.
For sure, yeah. Mahalo for being here, man. And before I let you go, do you have anything to plug, anywhere people can find you or email you or get connected for those lessons or the symposium?
Yeah, thanks so much, actually. So should be pretty easy to find, you know, Swell Paddle and Surf, SWELL TOFINO by Googling, and I've got my website out there. My social media stuff is also SWELL TOFINO. So that's kind of, I'm growing that again from scratch. I've got like maybe 100 followers. So hey, if you want to give a follow, that's great. But mostly I'm going to be spending some time, hopefully coming out with just some resources for people to kind of learn while they're at home. I've got this dream of being able to break down some of the surf instruction things that I talk about throughout my courses online through. Yeah. So, you know, as long as we're hunkered down at home, it's kind of a cool project for me to be working on. So hopefully more of that in the future.
If you ever do a weather forecasting, you know, workshop or masterclass, let me know. I'll be there.
That's it. Yeah, awesome. And that's the kind of brainstorming ideas I need. So yeah, hey, planted the seed.
Emre, you're living the dream, man. I wish I was there doing what you're doing, but I'm working on getting there. And it's an honor to have you as a friend and a teacher. And man, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Great to connect. And yeah, can't wait to be on the water again together. Hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah, man, definitely. Stay stoked.
Yes. See you later.